All right, welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. I'm really psyched to have Carlos with me as well, virtually. Carlos, I just want to say this. I love, not just to you, I'm saying this to you, but everyone. I love talking to Carlos, whether it's in a live stream, by phone, in person. So I want to thank you for giving me the opportunity to chat with you and pick your brain, Carlos.
Oh, thank you. Thank you. It's always a pleasure to talk with you, be here with you, do the podcast with you. Any chance we get to talk and just discuss, it's always awesome.
No question about it. And one of the best things I ever did when I was an organizer was hire Carlos. And he was a little reluctant. He's like, I don't know about this. Maybe it's not the right thing for me. And I just kept calling him and I kept calling him. And finally he's like, all right. And then he realized he made a terrible mistake not following his first thought, his first instincts. But hey,
Not at
you
all.
screwed up. You listened to you followed me. So that was a big
Not at
mistake.
all. I am so happy just for the opportunity that you gave me, and really it helped me become a better organizer, activist, and then yeah, a lot of the tools I use, the insights and the stuff came from you. So definitely, it's a lot of props to you.
Yeah, I appreciate that, Carlos. I mean, I was just kind of, get putting a little dig to myself, of course, there, but no, I feel like I was a good organizer to hire him. All right, so that's enough of our mutual
Hey, Al,
admiration society. Yeah,
one
go
one
ahead.
quick thing. I can't see your video right now.
Ah, thank you for telling me that. I restart the video equipment, the program, which has got a few little bugs in it. Of course, I use it because it's free. I didn't want to lay out for the expensive software package. And one of the few problems it seems to have, Carlos, and this only happens, this is the OBS studio, which I remember this was one of the areas, Carlos, I taught Carlos everything I know, but he was like, I'm not learning OBS studio, right? You still won't do that.
No, that was above my pay grade, and I'm gonna keep it right there.
I showed him all like the different buttons and everything. He's like, nah, I don't want to deal with that. And you're like everyone. I mean, the people at OR have had a lot of trouble. But the one bug I've noticed before going live is there get delays come in. So you'll see my mouth, my lips move, but you won't hear me for like a second. And it's very disconcerting. So I always restart the program just before going live, or I try to. And when I do that, you can't see the screen. I have to hit one more button, which I forget. And that happens with a lot of guests. So, all right, let's get right to it. We don't have a ton of time. Here's Joe Biden 2 days ago in Vietnam. Let's play the clip.
Yeah, we talked about at the conference overall. We talked about stability. We talked about making sure that the third world, the southern hemisphere had access to change it, had access. It wasn't confrontational at all. You came up to me
Thank you, everybody. This ends the press conference. Thanks,
All
everyone.
right, so they just stopped it there, Carlos. And Joe Biden having a lot of trouble. What is your reaction to that just 2 days ago?
It's almost as if his handler saw this, like it's like you see a train derailing. It's like, oh no, 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 no. Someone stop, someone pull the brake or something. And it's kind of sad. Like to a point you can look at it and say, okay, cool, it's funny, he's stumbling over his words, all that. But then it's kind of like, at what point do we say this may be like elder abuse? Like we're like making you go through things that honestly he should be relaxing with his family. He has the money, he has the power just to chill out, stay home with his family.
It's
They
upsetting to
tell him
watch,
like,
right? I mean, it's bottom line. This is the most powerful person in the world. There's no one close. You might want to say President Xi of China, but I don't think so. It's sad to watch. And I played the video of McConnell when he froze. And again, it's upsetting. I mean, when we get older, things do break down. The,
yeah.
the memory banks in the head don't always, they get confused, they get glitches. And that's what we're seeing. We also saw, and you were surprised by this headline, which I shared with you this morning. I'm not sure if you had seen it previously in the Washington Post. What's your reaction, though, to this?
I'm surprised that corporate media was okay with doing this. I know there's been a big thing of corporate media saying, "Oh no, nothing's wrong with Biden. His age doesn't matter. That's just a small factor in the whole thing." Or even his policies, he's perfect. He's better than Trump, so we have to support him. And to see them actually come out, or a columnist of theirs come out, and it's not just in a total opinion op-ed part, it's actually someone who works with them a lot, put this out. It really shows that maybe, I wouldn't say that corporate media is coming around to really recognizing the problems that people are having, but they're noticing that, all right, it's a large swath of the public who's like, look, I do not want him to be our president again. And they're thinking, all right, we have to at least give lip service to the people who believe in this.
It's kind of an elephant in the room at this point, right? You can't ignore it completely. I'm going to go a little further. By the way, as you mentioned, David Ignatius, his opinion piece this morning in the Washington Post, President Biden should not run again in 2024. And I'm a little surprised also by the headline, for sure. That's why I put it up. But I'm starting to come around to this view. I'm not going to vote for Biden. I don't support Biden. I wouldn't vote for him regardless. So I don't want him to be the president. But that said, I have been arguing on this program that I believe he would be the strongest Democrat against whoever the Republican is, almost certainly Trump.
Really?
I'm not sure about that anymore. I don't think he would be. And I guess you don't think so either. Is that right, Carlos?
I haven't thought so. Even back in the 2020 election, I didn't think he was the best Democrat to go against Trump. I don't think he's the best Democrat to go against Trump, DeSantis. Hell, even Nikki Haley in polling is doing better than Biden is. And a lot of us, before the Republican debates, were thinking, why is she running? So I don't think he's the best. And I mean, if it's not him and something happens to him, there's only one person who would assume the position after him, and she ain't doing well.
Well, that is certainly part of Ignatius's point. And as you mentioned, I just want to briefly, David Ignatius is one of the most influential writers at the newspaper. He does the foreign policy. He has been a full-throated supporter of the war in Ukraine, which Biden obviously supports as well. You're shaking your head. I dislike it completely. Ignatius has a lot of praise for Biden in this article. We're not going to talk about that. We're going to focus on, because I mean, I think you can all guess where he would come down. He's been he's been effective. He's gotten good compromises, this, that, and the other thing. And the Post, he hasn't done anything radical, which of course the Post would like. And he's been a warmonger, but he acknowledges a lot of problems, Carlos. So let me, you mentioned Harris. So let me just quickly put this up on screen, what he says about her, what David Ignatius says. Kamala Harris is less popular than Biden, and she has failed to gain traction. That's obvious. She's failed to gain traction. What is behind? I never liked Kamala Harris from my days in California, only because of her policies. Same reason I don't like Biden. I don't, maybe the corruption of Biden I don't like, and there's certain traits that I think Harris has that for me are somewhat off-putting. But in the end, I just care about policy. I don't like her policy. Why do you think she is struggling so mightily to get support in the Democratic base?
I think because she never, on a national level, never had a base. Like, at least Biden, going back, had a strong base of older Black people who supported him. He had a strong base of a older generation of moderate, some union workers because of the state he represented in the Senate. So he had his own base. Kamala Harris has just never been someone on a national level who had a base. And even going back into the 2020 election, she was kind of floated as the next coming of Obama. This is someone who is going to be really, really effective, and she's good in the Senate. She was more of a media creation nationally. And I think when people started looking at her policies as a state's attorney, and also talking about a criminal justice policy, she was a very tough on crime prosecutor. She was very lock them up. We need to even prosecute parents for their kids not coming to school. And it's things like that the Black community, even though criminal justice isn't our only issue, we didn't like that part about her. And then we kind of noticed over time, just as the public, of she didn't really seem authentic. She doesn't have that kind of authentic personality of when I talk to you, I'm giving you a straight answer. Here's my personal feelings on it. Even when we see speeches, and she does this like rule of three. You're a lawyer, so you might know what that is. Of
Yeah.
like, say something 3 times in a certain way you say it, and if you're talking to just everyday people, that's very weird. It sounds weird. It's off-putting and it's awkward.
Do you think, and we're both guys here, and it's interesting, I think it's true. Her policies have not endeared her to anybody particularly, but to poor, struggling, working people who are disproportionately people of color, clearly has not. Do you think also, though, she, like you said, she doesn't feel authentic? That's one thing that I think most people say Trump feels authentic. He may lie to you, but he presents who he is to you. Do you think that may be behind these polls that suggest that he's getting more support from African Americans and much more support from Latinos? And do you buy those polls?
I buy them to an extent. I feel like all the polls that we see where the headline is, "Oh, Trump gaining traction in the Black community," it also needs to have an asterisk by what does gaining traction mean. If you're at 5% Black people will vote for you, and then it's gone up to 8 or 9%, yeah, you're gaining traction, but the majority of Black people are not switching favor over to Trump. It's a very small margin. The majority of it is people just not liking Biden. Now, for the Hispanic community, Latino community, I don't really know where they're switching of it may be, but you see Hispanic and Latino people, they have more of they're not as sold to the Democratic Party as Black voters are. A lot of Black voters are sold to the Democratic Party of, this is my party, I'm not leaving it. And I think it's out of, the Republican Party doesn't cater to us or try to help us at all. So when it's only when we live in a duopoly, where do you go? Like, mama's acting wrong, I gotta go to the dad's house, I guess, because I have nowhere else to live at.
Well, I mean, there's certainly prominent Latinos high up in the Republican Party. Ted Cruz, Marco Rubio, among others. Tim Scott now is a Republican from South Carolina. He's very right wing. It's a right wing party. It's an extreme party. But, I always just bring up this story, and I've done it many times, but a friend of mine from Detroit who is African American, he's a photographer, he's a professional. I asked him, was he going to vote, about Trump? And he told me he was going to vote for Trump in 2016 because unless he saw a real plan by the Democrats to create jobs in Detroit. And he had he was a solidly middle class. He was not, like I said, a professional photographer, very successful, did not live in downtown Detroit, which was then rougher, actually. It's gotten to be more expensive. In fact, that's been a problem too, because many of the folks who live in inner cities of Detroit, Cleveland are now getting priced out.
Well, yeah,
and those were tough places to live, but they were home. They were from vibrant communities, and now they're getting pushed out. So, I just bring up that story because no community is monolithic. And if the Democrats can't make the economy better for poor, struggling, working people, they're going to lose them.
No, you're right. And I mean, just going back to people kind of being disaffected or tired of Biden, you can't have someone who, when they run, his win was based off of Black voters. Basically, that's why Biden won. I mean, he was tanking until South Carolina came to save him. And then when he needed 2 extra senators, he had to go ask Black people to come out for your vote. But you told voters $2,000 checks. You told them, I'm clearing $10,000 or up to $20,000 of student loan debt and clearing all HBCU debt. And then when you get in office, even a public option, things that would benefit Black voters, voting rights, when you get in, it's kind of like, okay, well, we're not going to do this. We're not going to do this. And we're not going to give you a $2,000 check. I'm going to combine our check with Trump's check, even though we said he's horrible. And then we're going to basically do a bullshit version of student loan relief, which didn't happen.
Yeah, the people who bring up student loans as though that's some great thing that Biden did, it's absurd. He actually accelerated the time when the debts would become due again.
Yeah,
And I guess there's been the forgiveness was rejected by the Supreme Court, but even if it had been, it was like it was a pittance
it was.
compared to $10,000. People are $500,000 in debt and
You
from
even have
college
people
loans.
who said it was like legal scholars who said the process he did it was wrong. He should have just started with the Higher Education Act, so then there would and not means tested, so there is no blocking it because it's no time. But this is because a lot of Democrats or neoliberals don't want to do it. It's just I want the public to think I'm doing it. So for the next election, you all come out to vote for us.
All right, you mentioned, as did Ignatius Carlos, the liability that is Kamala Harris. What about the second liability that Ignatius points out? And we'll talk about some others, which he actually mentions. And I'm glad he did. I was amazed at how thorough this article was. But he focuses on two. I think it's fair. Harris and age, which actually comes first. I think we saw that in that video. I don't know if you have anything else to add.
Just at a certain age, everyone knows you're not the same. You're not the same when you're 20 to when you're 90. And I'm tired of the argument of, well, it's ageist to say he's too old to run again. And like, we wouldn't let a 99-year-old fly a plane because we know the issues with it. So at a certain rate, you need to focus on you. I think it's elder abuse to see Dianne Feinstein, Mitch McConnell, Joe Biden still doing these jobs. And you know what? It's not even about age, because Bernie Sanders is 1 year older than Biden is. I always think it's weird when people mention Bernie Sanders is older. He's just 1 year older, but he doesn't have the cognitive issues that Biden has. It's really about your cognitive ability. So me personally, maybe there should be a limit on how old you can be to run for an office, or maybe it should be you have to take a cognitive test every year.
Ronald Reagan was 69 when he was elected for the first time. He was the oldest president at that time. And people expressed a lot of consternation that he was too old. And that would be 13 years younger than Biden if he is reelected at 82. Also, I know, Carlos, that Reagan suffered cognitive decline, obviously, in his second term, and some feel that it was already on display towards the end of term one. So this is an absolutely legitimate thing to worry about. I do agree with you that Bernie looks much better. He seems to perform much better. I frankly think Bernie's too old too. I don't want Bernie to run. You know,
I would not want him to be a senator anymore. And people always say, "Oh, but he's so great and progressive." There are a lot other progressive people than him, and maybe with some new people, we get new ideas and not the same Bernie Sanders that we've been seeing of, okay, I lost for president twice, I'm done. I'm just going to go ahead along with the party that I kind of associate with, and I'm done fighting for anything.
All right, I'm with you there. And Trump is going to be 77, and Trump is clearly, I mean, for many reasons, should be disqualified. But I also think he's too old among all the other issues. But again, he doesn't look like he's lost much on his fastball. Not that he ever had much of one, but, you know, he goes to those town halls. He seems pretty much the same. So just like Bernie.
Energy in his own way.
He's more energetic. Yeah, I'll give him that for sure.
We're run by the nursing home. The nursing home has taken the master key to the complex, and they're running it.
Well, he lives down there in Palm Beach, right? So that's where there are a lot of seniors. So I'll put full screen right from Ignatius. I redlined or circled or squared or whatever what I wanted to take from this. And we can ignore the first because we already talked about Kamala Harris. But Ignatius also said he should have blocked Speaker Pelosi's visit to Taiwan, which he notes did considerable damage. I actually am with him there. I, at the time, didn't think it was a mistake for her to go to Taiwan, but in retrospect, I think Ignatius is right. And I was amazed, Carlos, that he put in the bottom circle there. He certainly should have resisted his son's attempts to impress clients by getting dad on the phone. I have not talked much about this because I feel like the corruption, I feel like that's sort of a de minimis compared to what Trump did. And I don't support Biden, and I don't like to play the what about game, but what Trump did for his kids, I think, goes far beyond what Biden did. But that the corporate news is going to put that out there. That to me is pretty momentous. That they would say, you shouldn't have gotten on the phone. There's corruption there, when they're trying everything possible to deny that Biden was corrupt or is corrupt.
Yeah, I mean, you have McCarthy and the Republicans in the House talking about, let's bring up some impeachment articles because of this, and I'm like, at some point, I think the problem is we're getting to a point in the duopoly that no one wants to challenge the head of their party. So it's kind of like we're going to keep on ushering them through. And I mean, what are we going to do next year when it's the general and Biden's the Democratic person, Trump is or if Trump is even, I don't think he'll go to jail just by history is showing itself. But if it's him and Biden, what are we going to do? Have two kind of corrupt people that we're vying for?
When the Democrats do this, they hurt themselves desperately, because just like we saw with Clinton, because the arguments about Trump's corruption, how is Hillary Clinton going to make that argument when she had spent the past, both as Secretary of State and before that, spanning the globe to make millions and millions and millions of dollars giving speeches to banks and the like in support of her family Clinton Global Initiative nonsense, and give her husband and her these $1 million salary jobs.
To speak at an event, we're paying you hundreds of thousands of dollars to. Now, whatever she's saying is not going to be that influential or that great. That we're paying you. We're not paying you to speak. We're paying for you for it's a long-term investment, and that's the problem, that a lot of these people are making long-term investments in politicians to go against the actual voters and the people who they represent. And I mean, even to
we lost you for a sec, Carlos. You froze. Well, let me.
At this point, are you just doing this for what my family called it, shits and giggles? At this point, like, is it just some funny thing for you to do? But it was on Savvy Sab's podcast, she had on Shahid Buttar, who ran against her twice
against Pelosi.
Yeah,
you know what? You froze there for like 3 seconds. I thought I was talking to Mitch for a moment there, because you were like, we're just.
See, I had a senior mode.
So you were like. So anyway, you were talking about Pelosi going to Taiwan or some other.
Oh yeah, no, it's just about how Pelosi running again. There's been rumors.
Right, she's running again. She did announce it. I don't know if you saw that definitively. She has announced at also, I believe, the same age as Biden, 82, or she will be next year. It's very. Here's my rejoinder, real quick. And I know he jumped in, and I was going to brag that I'm better than Brianna Joy Gray, who's probably my second favorite host after. Well, we all know who's number one, because she talks more than I do. I don't know if you've caught that. She can just go, and I'm like, oh, come on. But then I'm like, what about me? I can't. That's a pot calling a kettle, because I'm pretty bad there too. So with regard to Pelosi, this is, to me, the voters of San Francisco. Vote her out. You don't have to vote for her. Vote for somebody else.
See, but I think that's also the argument that people use against term limits, which I used to be against term limits too, because I'm thinking if the people want this person in, they'll keep voting for him. But the problem is the majority of the voters who vote are disenfranchised. They only vote that twice a year or every other year, and they vote based off of name recognition. So,
or maybe only every 4 years. Some voters will only vote for president.
Yep. And then if Nancy Pelosi's running, it's just, oh, I know that name. I know I'll vote for her.
Right.
And some people are even saying that what she's doing is just doing one more round so that her daughter can run for her seat. So it's like these continuations of these political dynasties.
It's horrible. I mean, it's. But again, the voters don't have to vote for Alexandra Pelosi or whichever. I think she has two daughters. I don't know the other one, but Christina, right? Yeah, Alexandra. So yeah, just a real quick on Nancy Pelosi. Her dad, was mayor of Baltimore, and I think he was a pretty. He wasn't always the most honest mayor either. But the one thing he had was he had real populist cred. He was out there, pressing the flesh, going to the synagogues, going to the black churches, going to the Catholic Italian guy, going to every neighborhood. The Polish vote is big in. I mean, he knew how to work the voters, and he did deliver for them. What the hell is? I guess San Francisco's got 10 cities everywhere. The crime rate is going up. What the hell is she doing for her city?
For how she is, like for her not to be progressive. And as progressive as they are, it's a balancing, but also they're very wealthy too.
It's so rich. Oh my! It's so rich and poor. That's all there is. You gotta have 250 grand coming in a year just to survive. It's so crazy expensive. All right. So the corruption we just mentioned with the Biden issue. And that's not going to get better. I'm going to quick transition, Carl. So like I've said before, we don't have a ton of time. I want to get to this next story. By the way, if you want to join us, I will take your call real quick, 240-363-7190. Don't forget to click subscribe, bottom right of the screen. This is your last chance this week to talk to me. I won't be on tomorrow or Friday. Heading to New York to see Elizabeth's Radical Agenda. We saw Elizabeth last week. She's great. So I won't be available to do programs the next few days. Democrats are not going to take on dark money, corporate influence in their party, Carlos.
Shout out to Bill Clinton again, as we were talking earlier. It just seems like it was weird. And it was a Marianne Williamson clip I saw on Twitter or X, as we call it now, that she was saying when the Democratic Party of today is the same as the Republican Party back in the day, that the same corporate elites who are running it are now giving to both parties and choosing that, hey, this is us, we control you all, not the people. Because the Democratic Party, they used to get most of their funding from unions, lawyers, everyday grassroots dollars, but now that's not seen as a thing because most of them can't raise grassroots dollars. They don't have the network, they don't care to meet the people, and they don't care to provide policies that make people galvanize around them to say, oh, no, we need this person because they're doing great. We live in a corrupt duopoly.
It's easier to raise one contribution of 100,000 or 50,000 than it is to find a whole bunch of $27 donors. That said, you do have the AOCs out there and the Jamie Raskins who are raising money from small contributions, yet they're not. This is like, let me backtrack for a moment. Even the people who give the small dollar amounts, Carlos, they are wealthier than the average American. Most Americans, I believe, right now are in debt, or if they aren't, they have maybe $1,000 or $2,000 in the bank. So even a $27 donation for those people is significant, is sizable. So even an AOC or a Raskin in my district, Jamie Raskin from Maryland, yep. Carlos is in Maryland as well. They are taking money from people whose positions are to the right of many of their constituents, and we see that for sure in their policies.
You're right.
It's really tough. The only solution is you got to raise taxes. You got to reduce wealth and income inequality. That's the only solution. And you can see that Joe Biden is the reason, at least according to Larry Cohen, formerly both Carlos's and my boss's boss, when we worked at our revolution. Cohen says it's Joe Biden who's keeping the DNC, and I believe before him, Obama, and you mentioned Clinton, who never met a donor he didn't like, that they're keeping the party as corrupt as it is. So, and yet, Carlos, not one Democrat, including these allegedly progressive groups, will will break with Biden to support an alternative candidate, either Williamson, as you mentioned, or my candidate, Dr. West.
It's weird. It's how can we actually push anyone if even in the primary we're not going to say, hey, like all these organizations do not have to come out and say we support Biden. They could just say, you know what, we're still what 6-7 months from the primary. We're just going to wait for right now and see what's going to happen and just let people do what they will. You have organizers in Atlanta who are basically like, right now we can't get people to come out for Biden in the general or even probably in the primary enough for him to he's going to overwhelmingly win, but not this like show of support of no, because we still want him. It's like the whole you don't even hear Biden talking about cop city, but when you go back to the whole corporate side of the article that you just shared, you have Democrats in Atlanta who are pushing Cop City, which is funded by corporations. And the DNC is not going to sit here and say, oh no, we need to turn away dark corporate money because Biden doesn't raise small dollar donors. Now, if Sanders was the presidential person now, you might have a party who says, all right, we have to turn away corporate donors because they're not donating to us anymore. But we can't help that.
Well, I'll just say the situation in Atlanta is very disappointing because you do have progressive leadership, or at least self-described progressive leadership. It is a black majority, or at least minority majority city. I never thought Keisha Lance Bottoms was that progressive. I have to tell you, she's the mayor, and she's always been relatively close to the police. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I don't think current
is she not the mayor anymore? Am I wrong?
No.
Look. Is it a man now? Maybe it's a man. I'm sorry if I got that wrong.
Oh, no, you're good.
But I thought either way, I never thought Keisha Lance Bottoms was that progressive. And what it tells you is that the most important thing is to prevent the influence of money deciding who your leader is, because everyone's corruptible. That's what's so sad. We're going to talk about that with regard to the Sierra Club as well. But I do want to get, if we can, to this quick debate between quick clip here with Brianna Joy Gray. Unless you had a final word about this, Carlos, because I agree the Cop City is awful. This is really terrible. I mean, they're building this beautiful campus, many hundreds of millions of dollars. It's being promoted by banks, right? And other
Home Depot is
yeah. And I don't know, what are they going to get out of it? Why are they doing it? Just
protection. This is like an investment of, well, the Cop City itself, from what I've read, is basically, it's made for these big kind of trainings of like riots, things like that.
Right.
So a lot of these businesses are thinking, well, hey, let's basically have a paid security training center for us,
rather than having to hire their own.
They're cutting down environment for this.
Right. All the trees are going down. And you know, it's a very poor investment too, because it will lead to more anger, more resentment, understandably, among the community. And in some cases, there will be more crime as a result. If you invest that money to make the community more vibrant, more more sustaining, good jobs.
In higher income areas, because people are doing better for themselves. I don't need to go out and steal because all my needs are met. Like, so, or
I'll steal, but I'll steal in a different way, all through the stock market, or, foreclosing on somebody or denying them health care. But in terms of the street crime, right, you will not find people who have a decent, balance in their account aren't going to risk all of that to get shot by a cop or thrown in jail
for petty stuff.
Yeah.
And then, I guess last point of the DNC, corporate oligarchies are going to do what corporate oligarchies do.
It's very upsetting. All right, let's get to Brianna Joy Gray. She She does say a lot in this video, as I mentioned, but I think what she has to say is really, I'm having trouble here for a second, Carl. So I apologize. I'm just struggling here to get the right clip up. So let's see. Here we go, and then we'll get to the bad faith. And I actually have to say I really like this picture here. I'll just show the whole thing. She's sort of, you can see she started off sort of placating Crystal and Kyle. By the way, Kyle's dyed hair looks ridiculous. I'm totally off of that. Maybe that's some sort of kink thing he's got with Crystal because they're married, but I can't stand that. But you can see she's getting really pissed. And I was annoyed with her to begin this video because she I thought soft pedaled. And she even soft pedals here her support for West, which frustrated me somewhat. But she has a lot of wisdom here. Maybe we'll cut it off halfway through or interrupt because it's a bit long. But here's Brianna Joy Gray. Let's see if we can get this to work. There we go.
My concern is that every year, because we all vote for blue no matter who, because most Democrats vote blue no matter who, or most left-leaning people do, the message that gets sent out is that Democrats don't have a bar. You can go as low as you want, as close to the Democratic Party as Republican Party as you want, and there's a ratchet to the right effect. And Republicans know that they can keep being more and more extreme. And so I want you to explain to me what you predict to be the stopping point at which we're no longer saying this new Republican is the worst that has ever happened. This new Republican is the worst that has ever happened. Tell me you're not going to be saying the same thing about Ron DeSantis or Vivek Ramaswamy or whatever other person comes down the pike.
All right, I have to stop it there just for a minute because I want to address, or I want you to respond to that. She doesn't really take a breath. We've talked about this. Whenever we would have these politicians, wouldn't shut up, one job. Carlos knows that I would be texting you furiously, right? Because I hate that.
Cut them off.
I would just stop I would just go up to, I'm sorry, don't have time.
Yeah.
But I don't have that power with her. But what about what she said? What about her point, which is if you just say, okay, Biden's okay because Trump, when do we ever not hear that argument from you?
Never. I mean, they would say that even if it was Joe Biden versus Liz Cheney, which has somehow became this Democratic darling, even though she's horrible on policies, we would literally say, oh no, it's Liz Cheney. We still have to vote blue no matter who. And I'm someone who feels like this. Okay, if you want to vote for a Democrat, sure. I want more of the focus to be on, can we figure out who the Democratic person is going to be? Because I can't sit here and tell people vote blue no matter who, but then they view the blue as they're not going to help them either. So the majority of people aren't going to go vote Republican, or Democrats go vote Green Party. Most people just not vote for president.
I agree with you. When you tell a working person, somebody, when I say working person, I generally am thinking of someone who does not have a college degree and who is pretty much living paycheck to paycheck. So when I hear that you can't really say with a straight face to a working person, oh, you're better off with the Democrat in office, because Democrats have also been, as Brianna Joy Gray says, ratcheting things down, making things worse. But I would just even say, from my own personal perspective, I don't view the Democrats as allies at all. I mean, I don't have a lot of financial concerns, but one of them is some sort of long-term, very expensive, debilitating illness. And that is because people can see millions of dollars go down the drain fighting a cancer or something of that nature, even if they have decent health insurance, because the Democrats, as well as Republicans, refuse to even talk about Medicare for all, as an example, Carlos. And the other, environmental collapse, right? Environmental collapse is another worry. Democrats aren't making things better, aren't addressing it.
No, and I mean, we keep getting kind of gaslit. We were gaslit during the election of we're going to get a public option. No word of that anymore at all. We were gaslit by saying, oh, but the Inflation Reduction Act had the biggest investment in climate. Yes, but we've also seen the biggest approvals of these drilling on public lands. Like, it's as if we're trying to use little things to say, oh, he did good here, or even to economics of, oh, well, they passed the child tax credit, got of children out of poverty. But they also let it expire and got 50% of children back into poverty.
Right.
It's like
these are it's fiddling around on the edges. It's insufficient. Even the negotiations, right, on some of the health care, like the insulin, I mean, that will help some people, but it won't help everyone. And the people who aren't helped are going to be angry and resentful, and they're not going to view this as to their benefit. And even those who are helped will still have probably many expenses that they can't cover. So it's just not good enough. Let's hear the rest of Brianna Joy Gray.
And he was unable, in my subjective view, to respond credibly to that claim. So if somebody could tell me strategically what the stopping point is going to be of making this argument of the lesser of two evils, I would be open to the idea that, okay, this is the last one. Donald Trump, fine. He tried to steal the election, fine. That is a new line that he has crossed.
And I'm going to just stop her there one more time. I love the way she says that, oh, Donald Trump, he tried to steal the election, like it's no big deal. And this is the thing. It is a big deal, but we're sort of at a point where we have such little, I think, confidence or such little regard for our politicians that we're like, oh, okay, he tried to steal the election. Well,
yeah.
So
it's kind of, well, I mean, they're all kind of shit. So
exactly.
I mean,
Hillary Clinton spent 4 years claiming the Russians are the reason she lost, some sort of bogus. So that's why when I hear Democrats go on and on and on about how bad Trump is, I'm like, yeah, but he is bad. He's probably worse.
Trump, to be honest, in my opinion, probably is him getting voted in again probably is an existential threat as far as like he'll be on a warpath of revenge. But like I also say, it's on Joe Biden and the Democratic Party to get people to not vote for them. It's not on us as residents and public people to be like, oh, no, we have to keep him in power. We didn't want him to begin with in power. So it's on you to figure it out.
Well, Brianna Joy does have a response to what you even said about Trump being worse or more of a fascist, with which I totally agree. But I think what she has to say is relevant also. So let's play it.
But absent an acknowledgement that we are creating our own destiny by lowering the bar in these ways, I'm not comfortable coming out and criticizing anybody who no longer wants to be complicit in that kind of a system that's enabled the Democratic Party to not have a primary, treat Marianne Williamson as badly as they've treated her, treat Bernie Sanders as badly as they treated him, and openly come out and say they don't have to hold a free, fair election. The DNC argued that in court.
All right, so she's saying they're just not democratic either. They're not, neither side's democratic. Actually, I was thinking of a clip of Dr. West that I want to play for you in a moment. I don't think we'll have time for the Sierra Club. There was a lot there, but Carlos, I hope you'll come back in a week or two. We can talk about it. But, you know, she's talking about how there's not even fair primaries. You like Marianne Williamson, and do you agree with her that there's no chance she's going to get a fair shot?
Oh, yeah, none at all. I mean, there's no debate. So that kind of stops any kind of momentum that she could have. I mean, the only reason I believe RFK is doing as well as he was before people started noticing he's very conservative is that Kennedy last name. That's it. Like if Robert Kennedy was Robert Johnson, he would be polling probably less than Marianne Williamson at this point.
I think there's a lot to that. I think his anti-vax stance does appeal to a significant number of people. He's well known for that. I agree with you about the Kennedy name. I also agree with you. He is not progressive. The idea that he's progressive, he came out full-throated in support of Israel's annexation of the West Bank and their persecution and oppression of Palestinians. He has not come out for Medicare for all, for example. But I'm going to challenge you a little bit on Marianne Williamson. She has stated she supports the tens or even now hundreds of billions of dollars we're funneling into Ukraine, which I totally oppose and which many Americans, I think perhaps most now, oppose.
No, you're definitely right. I feel like is she a perfect candidate? No. I mean, Bernie Sanders wasn't perfect either, but I feel as if for Marianne Williamson, it's so many other things that I like about her policy that if we're talking about a primary, I'm fine supporting her in the primary because I'm registered Democrat, so I'm not going to vote for RFK. I'm not going to vote for Biden. And those are my only three choices at this moment. So that's why I'll choose her.
And that's very fair, Carlos. I won't push back on that, but I will return to the original topic, which was Biden Harris. It sounds to me like you're not buying Ignatius's call or implication that the Democrats, will come up with another candidate.
Oh, I don't think so. I think the party is too top heavy to allow anyone else to come in. And everyone's talking about, oh, Gavin Newsom, he may make a run for president. He wouldn't do it unless the top people give him the blessing of doing it. And if he does that, it would be an all-out war with Kamala Harris because she is looked at as the next person in line. So you're going to go against her and you're going to have all the claims of, you're talking about a woman who was next in line, a Black woman, an Asian woman who was in line for this white man from California, from the same state too. He wouldn't do that. I don't think he would.
But let me just play devil's advocate a little bit. I think I agree with you. 2 weeks ago, 100% I would be with you, but now I'm not as certain. You said yourself, Kamala Harris is not well regarded in the African American community. The primary, as I understand this, and I could be wrong because I'm going to make a generalization here. Let's say it this way, one of the primary concerns of the Black community in America in the presidential race is defeating Trump. If African American voters are persuaded that the best chance to defeat Trump is Gavin Newsom running with, say, a Black woman like Karen Bass, or I'm sorry, the name escapes me now, but she's very prominent. She writes romance novels from Georgia.
Oh, Stacey Abrams?
Stacey Abrams, yeah. Well, she does. That's right. She made her money by writing. She's a very successful.
I think no one would ever pick her as a VP person just because she's lost all those times, and now
she hasn't won elections, right? But she supposedly, and I think she is reputed to have really turned Atlanta blue or Georgia blue. So she doesn't excite voters, and Georgia voters, you can't just blame it on race, because Georgia voters did in fact elect Reverend Warnock to be the U.S. senator. So
Warnock and Ossoff.
Well, Ossoff's white. He's Jewish. He's a Jewish white guy.
No, you're right. I mean, I just don't think.
And South Carolina elected Tim Scott. Although he had been, I think, appointed, but he won huge majority.
Nikki Haley appointed him too, which is funny that they're running against each other.
Yeah.
But no, you're right. I think to look at it, I think that you would have a older population. You would have a split in my mind for older population of Black voters who may feel like, I'm going with Kamala Harris because she's Black, because I want to see a woman in office, and I can't speak to her policies. Maybe they agree with the Biden policy.
There's a conservative streak, right? There's a law and order streak. I mean, we can't generalize on policy, but
you're right. You have a group, a solid group of especially older Black people who are more conservative on certain issues, where the younger Black community wouldn't support her. Now, would they support Gavin Newsom over her? I don't know, because Gavin Newsom has a weird progressive-y kind of vibe to him, where he's progressive, but he's also very corporate too. So I don't know, but I feel like if Kamala Harris isn't given her correct kind of,
I hear you. It would be viewed as like
a slight.
A slight, yes. And the thing about the thing about even putting parents or locking up a parent because their kid doesn't go to school, I can see seniors of any race saying, well, I made my kids go to school, that's where they belong. I could see some older folks saying that. Others wouldn't, but so
their kid's not going to school. It's the parents' fault.
That's right. That's right. So I don't think she would, and that argument would be if a white candidate did it, and they might be right. They wouldn't get nearly as much pushback. That might be fair. So I think it's fair to say what you just said, and I'm not in tune with the African American community. Obviously, you're not either. I mean, know some black people more than I do. Your family, but we all have very limited knowledge. I think there would be problems, but I'm not as convinced as you are at this point that Gavin Newsom wouldn't be a stronger candidate. And let me give you my ultimate argument on that. The debates. I just think if we saw what we just saw in Vietnam when he's on stage with Trump, that could be an absolute disaster for the Democrats. That wouldn't happen with Gavin Newsom.
Like, Trump is going to be so disrespectful, and I don't think we are in the same time or mood as we were in 2020 when Trump was just outright rude and disrespectful to Biden, where we as the public saw it, oh my gosh, like this is not what we want. It's going to be seen as a lot of people laughing about it and joking, because for some reason, and maybe it is because Trump has this authentic kind of way of talking to people. He comes across, even with the rude things he says, it's just funny. It's funny, and it just seems natural. It seems like something that if you go to work, we all know that one coworker who says like wild things out of his mouth, and it's like, okay, sure, Todd, thank you.
I'm with you. 100%. Like my son, who's very Democratic, my younger son, who's the Democrat, the older one's the Republican. My younger son, he's like, Trump's hilarious. Like, he thinks he's funny, and he's entertaining. Now, he's not going to vote for Trump no matter what, but people who are less political, less partisan, oh, he's a laugh riot. I'd love to have a beer with him. He's your crazy uncle. Why not? And my older son, who is the conservative, he doesn't like Trump at all, because Trump isn't, a lot of conservatives don't like Trump. They're like, he's too populist. He's not really, he's like a corporate type, I guess. I don't even know where I would peg him. Let's go to my candidate. And again, I love what you said. She's not perfect. Neither is Dr. West, no question. But I think he's closer. And I'll play this, and then I have a couple thoughts, but I want to hear yours first. So let's get to West.
I think we've reached such a low point in the nation.
Oh, there's Brianna again.
Either we go for broke and try, in fact, to reshape most of the political system. It'd be nice to have ranked priority voting and proportional representation. That would be a positive thing. Democratic Party has no interest in that whatsoever. It's clear that Biden and company have no serious interest in trying to scale back on the militarism abroad. They have no serious interest in trying to really make poor and working people a priority. So that Bernie's argument, and again, I love my brother no matter what, but Bernie's argument is there's never time to break. And part of the paradox here, my sister, is the neo-fascism that's escalating is predicated on the rottenness of a system in which the Democratic Party facilitates that frustration and desperation because it can't present an alternative. And if America is unable to present an alternative to the Democratic parties in the end, then we're going fascist.
Yeah, he said we're going fascist. I had to cut it off right there because just they never stopped. I know you started laughing. Was that because he was just going on as well, or was there some other reason that you were chuckling there, Carlos?
It's the way Cornel West talks, which I love. Cornel West. I wouldn't choose to listen to him give a speech early in the morning. It's a lot. It's a lot, but if you sit back and listen, it makes sense.
Yeah, he is a distinctive speaker, and I don't think it's to everyone's taste. It probably won't help him. But he made the point, I think, perfectly, which is if we're going to accept the argument we can't vote for Trump because he's a fascist, so we're going to vote for Biden, then we're going to get a fascist.
Yeah. I mean, it's what's the old saying? It's the lesser of two evils is kind of still evil. That's still evil. But the one thing I'll say for voting for Cornel West, which I probably am going to do as well at this point, is I would love to see I want to see Black voters not have a hold over them by the Democratic Party. Now, I'm not going to say Black voters go vote Republican because I don't see what that does for us, but at least making it so the Democratic Party has to fight for our vote. It is not as because when Biden got in office, it was this famous call with him and a bunch of Black civil rights leaders who basically told them, look, you need to start talking with the Hispanic people more because they're outnumbering you. And it's like, hold up, we won you the election. You're not going to fight for us. And I think the reason that Democratic voters don't really fight for Black voters to turn out or show up for them because they think, where else can you go but us? So if you have Black voters who are like, you know what? I'll vote Green Party then. Then that may, who knows? It may get them to say, all right, we need to start investing in actually passing legislation that benefits Black people, not just, hey, come to the White House for an event, I'll shake your hand and then I'll leave.
Yeah, what you just said there about trying to pry some of the pry open the lock that the Democratic Party seems to have on the vast majority of African American voters is exactly what Brianna Joy Gray said. And she made the point that by saying that, she gets an awful lot of hate. She is accused of being a Trump lover and of being I don't know what, betraying her community. Joe Biden said, what did Joe Biden say? You're not really Black, right? If you don't,
you ain't Black if you don't vote for,
if you don't
know who to vote for.
Yeah, if you don't know.
Trump.
That is not, that statement, except among a certain group, didn't excite any outrage. I don't think anyone was particularly upset.
Because
they agree. People agree with that. Right?
I mean, people agree with it. I would say what happens is for certain Black leaders who have meshed themselves in with the Democratic Party, it's like, look at Al Sharpton. Al Sharpton is one of those people, he would never talk bad about whoever the Democratic president is because he is in lockstep with them. And it's like, even if they're doing something to our detriment, we don't want to speak out because it's like the example I gave before. If the mom's acting bad, so you go live with the dad. When the dad starts to act up, where do you go? So now I'm stuck here, so I gotta at least make myself the most enjoyable I can.
Well, I think that's a great analogy because I think so many voters, because they're stuck between a bad mom and a bad dad, to use your analogy, they pick one and then they act like that's a really good mom or that's a really good dad. No matter how, they may lock them in their room, they may not feed them, they may put them, turn them out to work. It doesn't matter. Anything, they're still better than the other side, right? And so I think this is where we are, this partisanship, and it's led us to a very, very bad place. Let me say two other issues I want to say bring them up. One thing that frustrates me to no end, and you've said this, so this I find frustrating, although I can't argue with you, is when people say, oh, Dr. West has no chance. Oh, Marianne Williamson has no chance. I find that very frustrating, especially people in the media when they say that, because I feel like it's our job, and I'm saying I'm in the media because I do this, and you do lives, you stream, you podcast, you're out there too, Carlos, you write, that it's our job to convince people that they should vote for Cornel West, or they should vote for Marianne Williamson. I don't like Marianne Williamson, but Kyle, and she married Crystal and Kyle.
Yeah.
Why the hell aren't they out there persuading people either to vote for Williamson, or instead of saying, well, we can't support West because he can't win, so we're helping Trump, why aren't they saying, you got to vote for West, you can't let Biden spoil West's candidacy?
So I'll say for the Marianne Williamson argument, I don't agree with the argument, or I look at it as there is no chance of her winning. You voting for her in the primary is you showing your discontent with Biden. That's how I view it as. For Cornel or Dr. West, I view that as, to me, I don't believe a Green Party at the moment that we're in now is going to be able to win the presidential level. Now, I would love to see the Green Party take, let's say Dr. West gets over 5% of the vote, they start getting matching funds from the federal government, then they can start doing more work around voting reform, having like ranked choice voting, things like that to help them, but also take some of that money and start working on local, like getting locally elected Green Party members in office, because for a lot of people, it's hard to imagine a Green Party as a president when a lot of people have never even seen a Green Party in office in their life. I think that my argument for people voting for Cornel West is we need to, one, show to the Democratic Party they do not have a hold over us, and two, we need to get these matching funds so that we're able to have more diversity when it comes to who we vote for. It's not going to be a thing of, in my mind, I don't see a path for him to be president, just like I don't see a path for Marianne Williamson because there's no debates.
Yeah, I hear that. I can't argue with it. It just frustrates me because I feel like that's our job, right, is to convince people that this is the right thing to do. So when we say they're not going to win, I'm like, well, why would you vote for that person? So I really personally steer clear. I wanted your response. Okay, last word from you, Carlos, and then we're going to call it a day. Do you have anything you want to promote? Anything you've got published right now? Website? You got an interview that you want to share with us?
I can talk about an article I wrote a little bit ago. It was about having air conditioning as mandated. Like, so right now, people who rent, it is mandated that the property owner provide access to heat, hot, cold water, electricity. But for some reason, air conditioning is not added to that. So what you'll see is either you have housing that does not offer air conditioning, or what you'll see is people living at places that the AC may only cool down to 80 degrees, which we're living through a climate crisis, and we can see it is getting hotter and hotter every single day. And for longer, we're going to see a point when people are just dying inside of their homes as a lot of seniors are already from health issues.
It's true.
So
it's true.
It's time to just raise that level of standard of living to just be on par. That's just to me a basic essential.
Is there a link to that or a website where people can find that?
There's a article I can share with you.
I'll put that in the description of the program, but if you have the link, just want to tell us real quick, or just send me the URL if it's long and hard to remember, and I'll put it in the
Maryland Matters too.
It's in Maryland Matters. So Carlos writes for Maryland Matters, which is probably the premier political. You've written articles that they publish. They publish some of your submissions, several of Carlos's submissions, and I would say they're the preeminent Maryland political journal. They're online, but the Baltimore Sun does good coverage too. But Maryland Matters focuses on Annapolis to a really good degree, and I think they do a nice job. And I love what Carlos submits. So we'll put that in the description. And let me just also give you a quick shout out, because I know you've really prioritized and platformed tenants, especially tenants who are living in, questionable substandard housing. I know that's a major priority. So I appreciate that, and I know they do too. So thanks for doing that, Carlos.
Thank you. Thank you for providing me this platform to talk about stuff, and always glad to be here with you, Hal.
All right, go ahead. I'm sorry. You're going to say something.
This is important. People need to hear local voices of activists, organizers, and know what's going on the ground. So thank you for just providing this space.
Great to have Carlos on. I'll be back Monday. He'll be back with us soon. Have a great afternoon.